Hello, my name is Josh. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've recently been through a divorce. Thanks for coming back to my channel. Today I'd like to discuss a book that was recommended to me by the counselor that we sent our children, my ex-wife and I sent our children to, that I found to be really helpful. We actually found this book, or were suggested this book, several months into the divorce. I kind of wish I would have had it beforehand, frankly, because it had some really good advice. But the book is entitled here. I'll see if I can get it in the shot there for you. It's called Between Two Homes. I will make sure to put a link to it down below so you can buy it. But it is a book that I would highly recommend. It really goes a lot. Actually, it covers a lot of topics. It covers kind of what the divorce process looks like. It covers little things like remarriage rates, and it backs all that information up with the studies where that comes from. But more importantly, it takes a really good look on how divorce affects children. One thing that I really liked actually is it goes through by age brackets and describes from a high level how children, 0 to 5 and then 5 to 10, and it goes down the line there, how they process divorce, how they see divorce, what they understand from their perspective about divorce. And then which is great because then you know how best to help your children through the divorce. Other things that it goes into pretty heavily is co-parenting plans. How to come up with a co-parenting plan, sometimes based on maybe some differences that have popped up during the divorce, you'll find that creating a co-parenting plan is not easy. Maybe it is, but sometimes it's not easy at all. This book goes into ways of resolving those issues, questions to ask yourself as the couple who is splitting, questions to consider even as an individual when it comes to your children in this divorce process. I think one thing that everyone agrees on is the ultimate victims of divorce are the children. So this book was a really good aid in thinking about the children and thinking about their perspective. Another thing that it goes into as well is considerations when it comes time to remarry, how children see the remarriage and how that remarriage affects the children, and then ways to make that more of a positive a thing for the children, and basically help in understanding their perspective on that remarriage. Sometimes as adults, we just, especially if we haven't been through a divorce ourselves when we were children, there's a lot of things that we don't even think or consider in the process. And that's both for the divorce and for a remarriage. So this book, at least for me, I'm obviously not in a position to be remarried right now, but it did give me some key things that I'll look at whenever that day comes that I choose to get remarried. One thing that I do like, though, is it gives a lot of tips on how to discuss things with your children, as well as things to avoid discussing with your children. One of the things it really points out, which I completely agree with, is there should be no finger pointing. There should be no, well, we're getting divorced because your dad did this or your mom did that. You don't want to finger point at all. Even though that may be true, when it comes to the children, you do not want to finger point. It actually sends a lot of very negative messages to the children. Now, once they're adults, I guess you can kind of make a decision from there. But when they're children, it serves no good purpose to do any finger pointing. One of the suggestions, one of the things that I've heard people say in the past, and it really refutes, is this idea of saying, well, mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, so we're getting divorced. Well, kids often see that message as, oh, well, that means someday mom and dad may not love me, and what's going to happen to me when they don't love me. So it really brings up a lot of those kind of sayings and things that we think are good and healthy ideas to tell children, that the way children's brains work, the messaging comes across differently. And it's not our intent. We aren't intending to do anything hurtful. But sometimes those messages just, they get lost in translation there. One of the ideas that I really like that this book had was, so in my case, in my divorce process, I stayed in the home that we had while we were married, and it was my ex-wife who moved out. So while I do refer to this as my house when the kids are here, when I refer to my ex's house, I don't refer to it as, oh, that's your mom's house. I refer to it as, oh, that's your other house. And that really reinforces that idea that they really have two homes now. I want them to feel comfortable in my home, as this is a home for them, and I want them to feel comfortable that their mother's home is also a home for them. And so instead of distinguishing it and putting a lot of barriers in there, I try to minimize that and just say, oh, if they're here, I actually don't say this is my house. Sometimes I use my house and they'll ask me like, well, whose house are we going to? Then I may say, oh, we're going to my house. But if they're here and they're asking, oh, when are we going to mom's house? I'll say, oh, well, you're going to your other home at such and such time today. Again, just trying to reinforce that both of these are their home. Both of these should be a safe space for them and a place for them to feel comfortable and happy and everything that a child should have in a home. Finally, you may be close to ending the divorce process already, or you may have already completed the divorce process. I would still recommend picking up this book and reading this book. It's only about 150 pages. It's a fairly quick read, but there's a lot of wisdom in here. And the truth is, even though we may be the best parents in the world, or I guess you kind of question that while you're going through the divorce process sometimes, but even if you feel like you're a really good parent, books like this, at least for me, provide me insight and thoughts that I just don't have on my own, that I find to be very helpful. Now, truthfully, it's not like the entire book was an aha moment for me. There was a lot of things in there that made sense to me and I've already thought through, and so I didn't need a book to tell me. But there were several key insights throughout the book that I just thought were really helpful. And so I'd suggest anyone picking up and reading it. And as a matter of fact, it may be something you ask your soon-to-be ex-spouse or your ex-spouse to read also, so that especially when it comes to co-parenting, you can come to some agreements on. Anyways, my name's Josh. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This channel is not endorsed by the church. These thoughts are my own. I'm not a counselor or a therapist, but I will say that my children's counselor is the one who recommended this book. I think she's an excellent counselor, and I'm really glad she recommended this book, and I suggest you buy it and read it. Thanks.